Welcome back, guys, to another episode. Today, we got a true original in the building. He stands tall. He's incredibly hard to mistake, in my opinion. He's got his own style, his own attitude to him. Most importantly, we appreciate his great cigars he's been making recently. Robert, thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
Take me back to the early beginnings, the Hotel Humidor. You had a very entrepreneurial spirit your whole life. You know, I heard you famously once said that you never had a boss before.
Still don't have a boss.
Still don't have. Okay, we can get into that. And then, so what was that progression like? You know, why did you choose to start the Hotel Humidor, and then take us through all that until Caldwell?
Sure. So I've been a cigar smoker since I was very young. I was a very bad kid. So between the age of 10 and 12, I kind of tried like everything that was anything that I could get my hands on. And so one of these things was cigars. So I tried, I smoked whatever. But then I tried like a Philly or Have a Tampa or one of these cheap machine-made cigars.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, I'm doing anything that I can to basically get in trouble. And one weekend, my mother's out of town. And I had a sister like 10 years older, and she was with her husband babysitting me at the house. And they caught me smoking a cigar in the backyard, like cheap little cigar. And then so with the intention of making me sick and never smoke again, my brother-in-law took me down to Ernesto Carrillo's factory in Little Havana, bought me like an A size or double Corona, strong, dark cigar, brought me back to the house. And the idea is like, I'm gonna make this kid sick so he never smokes again. But instead I fell in love with a cigar. So I didn't finish the whole thing, but I smoked like a third of it over the next few days. And so I became a cigar smoker like at 12 years old. And when I was 12, I was a big kid also, and I had facial hair. And I wouldn't say I'd passed for 18, but I mean, I looked much older. And so I would go down to a cigar store in the neighborhood that my brother-in-law frequented, and I had gone in with him, give the guy a 20 and be like, hey, Peter sent me in for cigars. And the guy would just kind of give me like some cigars.
Yeah.
Later on, he told me that he knew that they were for me, but it was Miami, it was the 90s, no one cared, and I looked older. So anyways, fast forward to, my early 20s. I'd been at that point a cigar smoker for now 10 years, an avid cigar smoker. So I go out on my birthday, I leave my cigars in the car's in the valet, and I said, okay, I know that there's a double door humidor at the entrance of this restaurant. Ask for the cigar menu, I order a cigar, and so whatever, it says Padron. So I'm like, all right, Padron.
Padron, yeah.
What Padron is this? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, well, I'll take it, whatever. So they bring me a cigar. The wrapper's cracked, it's all dried out. So then I ask for the next cigar on the menu, whatever that is. They bring me that, and it's got beetle holes.
Okay.
And then so finally I get up, and I go to the humidor, and there's like 4 boxes on a double, stand-up commercial display. They're all messed up except for one box. And that one box was a brand called Pio. Never heard of it. Small brand out of Miami.
Yeah.
And they said, the guy said, drop off the cigars. If you sell them, pay. If you don't sell them, don't pay. But they knew nothing about cigar. And this is a really nice restaurant in Miami. So I go home that night after having this horrible experience in this restaurant. And it's a place I'd go to a lot. And then I Googled, like this is pre-smartphone. I Googled like, restaurant, cigar provider, like this type of thing, trying to find somebody I could refer this restaurant to. And there was no such company doing like hospitality cigar stuff.
Yeah.
So that kind of plants in my head. And then the next day I end up going to lunch with a friend of mine who then became one of my business partners. I light a cigar, I'm at a cafe. And the guy comes up, the owner, and he's giving me an ashtray. He's, cigar smells great. And then I just kind of had this light bulb moment. I said, I own a company distributing cigars to restaurants and hotels. We write the menu, we provide the humidors.
And you just said that on the spot.
Complete bullshit.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's sick.
And then
I admire that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I'm a hustler.
Yeah.
So he says, okay, I got 13 places or 20 places or whatever. Can you set me up on Monday? I said, no problem. So I had no idea what I was doing. I drive down to this place called Mike's Cigars, which is...
I'm familiar with the retailer, yeah.
So I go to Mike's, I buy like a bunch of little displays, I buy, a bunch of cigars. I go to like Marshall's or TJ Maxx, I buy like little picture frames, I type up menus, I print them out, and I drop them off. And so I was in business. But at the time, I was working in real estate in Miami. And so it was kind of like a night and weekend thing. And I had a friend of mine that was meant to be a sweat equity partner. And then after a couple of weeks, he said, listen, I can't work for free or for equity. I need to get a paycheck.
Yeah, he's got to get paid.
Yeah, and I said, listen, this isn't that type of thing, whatever. So I just kept doing that. And then over the course of time, after about 6-7 months, I realized that I had something. And so that was Hotel Humidor. And then at our peak, we had about 150 hotels and restaurants that we were selling cigars to. And so that's where I got started, was with that. And then through that, I met, your next question is probably going to be.
Well, Christian Aroa, right?
Exactly.
Which is a very prominent figure in the industry. How did that connection come about? And there's something related to Winwood. What is Winwood? I keep hearing about this and throughout your early beginnings. So what did that have to do with your career?
So Winwood was the cheapest place in kind of like the downtown Miami core that you could rent anything. Building anything you like. It was just basically an abandoned, really bad old industrial neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so I took a warehouse there for my business to store all my inventory, this type of thing. And I had met Christian and became friends with Christian because we were doing, by that time we were doing like Davidoff and Camacho in all the hotels.
Yes.
And we'd become friends, and then he was coming close to being out of his non-compete, and then he's like, why don't you turn this into a factory?
Yeah.
So then he came out of his non-compete, and then we ended up turning that into a factory, which then had a brand tied to it called Winwood.
Yeah.
So Winwood now in Miami is like it's probably the most expensive real estate in the whole city.
Oh, it just flipped on its head.
Dude, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But when we were there, we were paying nothing, and we had this really cool project. So that's when I first got started in manufacturing. But prior to that, when I had the Hotel Humidor company, that's where kind of the lost and found concept came from, because I was working with different factories to get special cigars to do private label for different hotel groups and restaurateurs and so forth.
Yeah.
So nonetheless, we built that factory in Miami with Christian, and that was my first taste at like operating a factory, really having a brand, understanding the complexities of the industry, how everything works from packaging to procuring tobacco. So I learned a lot of stuff.
Fair enough. So the timeline is currently as follows. I think 2009, 2010, Hotel Humidor. 2011 to 2013, you were doing the collaboration with Christian Aroa. You launched Caldwell in 2013, right? And how did you approach that, knowing that you're walking into a tradition-bound industry, and you were more of like a disruptor at the time because you kind of wanted to go against the whole norm of like everybody wanted big ring gauge cigars. You don't like big ring gauge cigars. You only smoke, mild to medium plus, and you stick with that. And they're very curated and crafted that way. Vintage tobaccos, not tobaccos that are readily available to, to make in massive quantities, right? So you stuck to your core, shoot from the hip style. And I think you were a success very early upon launching.
Immediately.
Yeah.
So looking at the cigar industry at this point, you had the kind of the classic brands. So you had the Cuban or Cuban-inspired, Cuban legacy style packaging. In that, I would include Fuente, you have Padron, you have those brands, plus all the Cuban-inspired, Cuban legacy, a lot of these guys that had kind of the same approach to the marketing. And then, as you mentioned, cigars were getting bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with balanced cigars that are harmonious in flavor, where the strength doesn't overpower the cigar, they're not over the top spicy, like this type of thing. And I don't like super creamy, that type of thing. But I really liked kind of the vintage approach to cigars, where they're harmonious and that the strength, the flavor, the creaminess, all the components of it are kind of in unison with each other. Nothing's standing out for me as a smoker. And I always loved small ring gauges. You'll see me smoke a Robusto or Toro sometimes, and I smoke everything to make sure it's burning right in the blend.
Sure.
But on my own, I'm a Corona guy, I'm a Lancero guy. So as you mentioned, I wanted to focus on the smaller sizes, and then also having a different approach, because in my hotel business, I came to know a lot of other manufacturers and factories and countries and what they did. And I noticed that, in Central America, you have everybody focused on, at that point, 3 or 4 tobaccos, which are what people wanted, right?
Yeah.
But then in the Caribbean, in Dominican Republic, they had 100 years of additional manufacturing and tobacco growing there. And then you had unique microclimates, and you had different people cultivating seeds in different ways. So you had, let's say, 100-something different expressions of tobacco. So you could have Corojo from here and Corojo from there, and they tasted completely different, because those farmers, over the course of time, had selected those seeds to continue growing them, and you ended up with something that tasted very unique. Now, the big Dominican manufacturers, they would just make a special edition. They wouldn't tell you what the tobacco was, and they just put Dominican.
Sure, yeah.
So I realized, why are they doing this? Well, they need to produce for quantity, quality, and consistency, but these are big numbers.
Absolutely.
And I never expected to be a big manufacturer, so I said, I can utilize these specialty tobaccos that these guys are using for limited editions that fall within my profile. Give me something unique, but I'm not going to have to make 1 million cigars. I need to make 100,000 cigars of this blend.
Absolutely.
So on the blending approach, that was where we kind of started. Was we wanted to give a different flavor, and a more nostalgic approach. So a very old world style of manufacturing, but I'm not going to do a cursive, like a Cuban looking product, and I'm not going to do a guns, tattoos, motorcycle, which at that time, that's what the kind of younger progressive brands were doing.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we ended up using our approach, which is a very art-centric, kind of funky, weird, off-the-cuff thing.
Absolutely.
And so to answer your question, I knew I was either going to fall flat on my face or I was going to be a success. And there was going to be nothing in the middle.
Nothing in the middle, yeah, because it's polarizing the way you approached it.
Yeah, and my personality, I'd rather have 100 than 50, and I'd rather have 0 than 50. If I'm going to go, I'm going to go. So that was kind of how we entered the market. And we produced something like 85,000 cigars, which we expected to last 12 months. Now, keep in mind, we're a no-name brand.
Yeah, you just started. This is 2013, I assume, right?
Yeah, and I sold them in like 3 or 4 weeks. And then, so we ended up our first year in cigar sales, something around 600,000 cigars sold, being ordered. But we could only fill like about 300,000. Because it's not like you buy it and you sell it tomorrow. It's the process to make it. So from that point, we were on back order, I think, for 4 or 5 years. It took us a very long time to finally be able to fill supply.
Now, when you see that success very early on, are you thinking, especially the first time this happens, is it a fluke? Do you feel confident? Like, because again, the whole approach to the branding, the approach to the blending, and the sizes that were kind of tailored to your personality. It could have been like people were just very intrigued the first time. A lot of cigars drop the first time and people try it, but the key is you want to know if it's a repeat purchase. Did you like it enough to keep coming back? Did you ever have that concern in the early stages?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and not just in the early stages. So it happens over the course of time. So as you hit these different milestones in terms of like growth or size or this type of thing, you think that there's a ceiling. And there are ceilings. There's like very hard ceilings in the cigar industry that are hard to break through in terms of like revenue or number of cigars and this type of thing. But the first 4 or 5 weeks when we shipped product out, I was scared shitless. But then within 3 or 4 weeks, I had a retailer buy 50 boxes, calls me and says, I need 100 boxes.
More. Yeah.
And so then I said, okay, we got something. But I think it took me until like, we started the company in 2013. I would say 2020, post-COVID, like when people started ordering again, that's when I'm like, we made it. But it took me a very long time.
Moment, yeah.
But there's also something called imposter syndrome, which is like you're an entrepreneur, you're a business guy, you do a business that's successful, and you're like, why am I at the table? I'm not supposed to be at the table. And this is a very common thing. And I've talked to a lot of other people about this, but the whole time, like I'd be sitting at the table with these guys, and I'm like, I don't deserve a seat at this table.
That's interesting.
You get what I'm saying?
That's interesting. Despite all your success prior to that, you still feel that way. Wow.
Now I don't.
Yeah, of course. Well,
now
you've
I'm
been
cooking
around,
the meal, but
you probably feel numb to the volume that you're doing.
But for a very long time, it was like looking in the rearview mirror and like, are these guys going to catch up to? I mean, I don't know. So it was a very much a sense of, I wouldn't say luck, but it was like at some point this party's going to stop, and it just never did. The brand kept building and growing, and people enjoyed the cigars, and then actually over time, people that were like real full body became more medium bodied. People that were like huge ring gauge started smoking smaller.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh wow, this Lancero has so much more flavor than my 660. And I'm like, that's how it works, my friend. So, but we were the brand that had that medium bodied, not full power thing, and we had a lot of small sizes. So the market, it still hasn't shifted completely, but in the United States, it started coming back more to kind of the basics. And we were a brand that always specialized in those things. And I have all the time now, guys are like, I smoked full-bodied Maduros or Spice Bombs or these big ring gauges for the last 7 years, and I just started getting into Connecticut's, and man, this Eastern Standard's got so much flavor.
Yeah, it's not your traditional Connecticut.
Exactly.
It's like it has like the little like mold cheesy type element to it. Yeah. Well, because I get customers I get that feedback all the time from a retailer's perspective.
It's got that basement aged cheese.
You literally described it word for word.
Delicious.
It's funny you were talking about imposter syndrome. I can't help but think, in the early days at the PCA, you had this this trash booth, and what was the idea behind? Like, was it because you didn't want to appeal to the masses, and you just wanted to kind of be in the back end of things, but it ended up being a huge marketing success too, right?
Yeah. So we started out with like very alternative but cool, well-designed booths. And so our first year we made cigar boxes that were, I mean, like giant cigar boxes. And I think we could fit 50 boxes into one of these giant boxes. But they were very thick and they were constructed to either be a chair or a table, but we call them chair boxes. So you buy this show deal with these 50 boxes and they'd ship in this huge thing. But our whole booth was assembled with these things. It was amazing. It was our first year. And then like the show, like they don't acknowledge us, nothing. And I was sure we were gonna win best small booth, nothing. The next year again, we did something amazing. And then eventually we ended up building, at our biggest, we had 24 booths, which is a massive, massive footprint. And all of our whole booth space was built out of like old lobster traps and milk cartons, wood. But they were I found some hippies in LA that built me this amazing booth, and it was amazing. And then we had art all over it, and it was amazing. And then still nothing. And then in addition to that, they'd never put us, like we'd pay for 24 booths, which is $50,000, $60,000. And then when you get the brochure for the show, you couldn't find Caldwell. They never put us.
Why?
I don't know.
That's
But
insane.
yeah, so finally, when COVID hit, I just said, and the year before I'd said, listen, we're paying for this huge booth. We don't need it. We were spending $100,000 US to go to the show between salespeople, samples, booths, hotels, everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just gonna gut this thing. So I had this booth in storage. I call out, I'm like, how do I get rid of this booth? And they're like, it's $1,000 to throw it away. I'm like, all right, I'll send you $1,000, get rid of the booth. And we came in, we had a folding table, 2 chairs. And then the trash thing started because they didn't give us ashtrays or trash cans. And then I was a little bit pissed off with everything with these guys, so I just started throwing trash on the floor. And then the people from the convention center would come by and try to clean it.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to pay like all the cleaning people like $50, $100 to not touch my trash.
You wanted to keep the
I
trash
said it's
on
an
the
installation, it's part of the show. And nonetheless, the PCA guys would come by and they sit there and they kind of like look at the booth, but they'd never say anything.
Never told you anything. Never
Not
said
a
clean it
word.
up. Nothing.
But they knew if they did, or if they kicked me out of the show, that I would use it to market against.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
Like
use it as my
that
brand
rebellious energy. Yeah,
And then so that show, we did the trash thing. And then we just continued to do it. And we'd spend $5,000 instead of $100,000 going to the show.
And you get way more marketing out of it anyway.
And we
It was
started leaving
crazy.
early. So you're not allowed to leave early or you get a fine.
Yeah.
But at this point, the show was 4 days. But you do business for 2 days. And then the third day, you're kind of like hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
And the fourth day, you're like scratching your ass.
Of course, that was our experience. My brother and I, it was our first PCA trip this past, 2 months ago in New Orleans, whatever it was. And yeah, I can get that for you. It's all good. So it was funny. I saw the Cornell and Deal pipe. We'll get into the pipe thing in a second. And I did walk by you. You were really busy with a lot of people, as you can remember. I bet it's the same thing every year. I'm like, where's the trash? And then I remembered. Caldwell sold the brand in 2024 to Laudisi. Okay, so that's a pipe company, right? And how did that affect your ability to be as creative as you were prior to that? Because you were always, I feel like you are very artistic expression, especially with your branding and everything, obviously. And I mean, the pipe company's a much, much bigger company than the staff Caldwell had at the time. So how did you navigate that transition into the sale to continue to be as involved and expressive as you were before?
Well, I'd say that I'm not actually. So I'm as involved as I was prior, like on the blending, the brand creation, that type of thing. But on the marketing and the crazy shit that we did before, it is much more restrained because they're a bigger company and they're like we were like knock around guy, fun company, young, energetic brand.
Yeah.
But we didn't have anything else to be concerned about. So these guys, they have like their pipe tobacco, they have all their it's a major company. So you can't have like the cigar part making the rest of the part, like not gelling with the rest of the part. So effectively, some of the crazy stuff that we did before, we did have to kind of like pull in a little bit. Like we can't throw trash on the floor at the booth, things like that.
Yeah,
exactly. So,
yeah.
so, but to me, those were, like you mentioned before, it was, everybody talked about the trashed booth for years. So it's one of the best marketing things we ever did. But these guys, they're more professional, they're more mature, this type of thing. So we had to kind of like, so before it's like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, crazy. And then now it's like, okay, you can play within these 2 lines.
Yeah.
So we can still do like crazy stuff or whatever, but like
There's boundaries.
there's other concerns with the company outside
Yes.
of Caldwell.
Yes.
So there are some kind of boundaries that I have to stay inside of now.
Yeah, so, like, what is your current role now, post-sale? Like, what's your title within the company now?
So as I mentioned, I've never had a job.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I own a consulting company that has a contract with them, and I'm president of my consulting company. So they pay my consulting company pays me. But the consulting contract that my company has with them, and I literally did this because I never will have a job. So I would refuse to have like a boss. So my boss is my company that I own. But that contract with that company, with theirs, I do product development, so blending, whatever.
Yeah, it's basically what you were doing before. Right?
Marketing,
Yeah.
branding. But prior, like when I had free time or whenever, I'd be in the warehouse packing, shipping, unloading pallets, on the phone selling. You know, I was a small business and we were very lean with employees, so I did everything I could.
How many sales reps did you have prior?
Four or five.
And the rest were what, like brokers?
No, we had two direct in-house, plus like three brokers.
3 brokers?
So, and then now there's like, I think they have 8 or 10 or 12 salespeople with this company. But the idea is that I focus on what I do best and the highest value stuff for the company, which is all around the product and the marketing. That said, the marketing can't be quite as funky as it was. Like before we had a product, it's called Give a Fuck. And it wrote F-U-C-K because that's how you spell the word. And then when they bought us, they put F*C-K. But like Caldwell doesn't say F*, like we say fuck. Like we actually say the word and we actually print the word.
Yeah.
And you piss off 10 people, but 90 people are like, I'm glad they actually said it.
Mm-hmm,
So now we just put the star. So there's some certain things like that. And that's what I was saying about like these guardrails that like we can't put this curse word on our packaging because like the pipe smoker is going to think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there's other concerns, but nonetheless, my role is to focus on effectively the product and the brand projection and the marketing with some restraints.
Fair enough. You mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast that you walked into Ernesto Perez Carrillo's factory. How old were you? Was it
12.
You were 12. And you collaborated with him decades later on a very special project called Anastasia.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful full circle story. You're one of the most prolific collaborators I find in the boutique cigar brand world. Is there somebody that you haven't collaborated with that's on your radar?
No, because when we were like on our third year, we had done the Anastasia, we did Hit and Run with Matt Booth, we did the Tea with AJ and Matt,
Yes.
and then we had the All Out Kings with Drew Estate. So we had like a whole section of our business that was collaboration. And prior to that, there had been some collaborations, but years prior, it wasn't a thing. And then at a certain point, there started being like, oh, this company is doing a collab with, and it started becoming a thing. And then I don't like it when things become things. So it became a thing. So I'm like, it's not unique to us anymore because people are biting us. And
That's interesting because we see a lot of collaborations now with the boutique cigar brands of the world with like multiple factories and it's just not your thing anymore, right?
No. No. And same thing like Lost and Found. We used to do like paper packs, no labels with a sticker.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like when the pandemic hit, people couldn't get packaging material, but they had cigars. Yeah. It's not hard to get butcher paper. You can order stickers online. So everybody started doing like these paper packs. And then when they started doing that, we switched to boxes on Lost and Found with labels and that type of thing. So to me, you might be a market leader and you create a category or you do something unique that defines you. But when other people copy you and then it becomes a couple years, people look at it and they look at you of one of many, not the one.
Sure.
So for me on the collaboration thing, if I would have done a collaboration 7 years ago with another cool brand or something, it would have been amazing.
It would have been amazing, yeah.
But if I did it now, it would be expected.
Because a lot of people are.
Because everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I feel like half the boutique world is chasing that same energy now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not just the collaboration, but that I don't care kind of vibe. You know what I mean? How do you feel about that?
It's fake.
Robert? It's fake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
You can tell when people actually don't care.
Is that right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, people like there's like I don't give a fuck, and then there's like that guy doesn't give a fuck,
Mm-hmm.
and there's very few people that actually do not give a fuck, and I can tell you genuinely, like I'm not even going to tell you I don't give a fuck. You just like you know me.
You can just tell.
You talk to me before the interview. Everybody and even the guys that bought us, like before we sold, we sit down and I tell them all this stuff, all this shit, And then they buy the company, and then at some point after they buy the company, they said, well, we thought you were like fucking around. And I'm like, no. This is legitimately what you get. And so to me, if that's genuinely what you are, then that's your identity as a brand, as a person. This is who you are.
Yeah.
But to use it as a marketing approach, to me, is very cheap. So I'm not going to say that there's other people that are using that approach that genuinely don't feel that. There might be some people that are actually that way, but I don't know. So a lot of this, like bull in a china shop approach that people are having now that didn't exist prior to Caldwell, I don't see it as genuine, because if it were genuine, they would have had it then.
Wow. Well, I mean, look, you would know a lot more from that sense because you're more involved on that relationship manufacturing side of the industry. And I feel like from a retailer standpoint, it's the aftermath is what we see. After the product's been released, I don't know the behind the scenes, how the story developed with this person and this relationship, this product. But then people have their own, storytelling ways, and they angle it differently and whatever. But the point is that, you're obviously your own attitude. You have your own personality. You've been this way since the inception of your company.
My mom dropped me on my head when I was like 8-year-old.
Yeah. How did you decide on partnering with William Ventura, of all factories in the Dominican? Were you always with the same factory?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's ever asked me that, I don't think, or at least in recent history. So William's like, so that family, if you take William, the son Weber, and the other son Henderson, collectively they have over 100 years of manufacturing expertise. William started working in a cigar factory, I think he was 6 or 7 years old, sorting tobacco. And then eventually...
Sorry, he was 6 or 7?
6 or 7 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. Dominican Republic had zero...
Yeah.
And even if they did, nobody cares.
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
But he started very young, sorting tobacco, this type of thing. And then I think in his late teens, he started rolling cigars. And then eventually he became one of the first very few people at Davidoff. When Davidoff went to Dominican Republic, Hanky Kellner to open a factory.
This is a long, long time ago. How old is William?
It's got to be 70.
Oh my God! For this whole time, because I've never met him, right? But I thought he was a similar age too. Because I thought you would vibe with somebody, you would connect with somebody that's relatable to you.
Well, he is, and he's got 2 sons that are. So Henderson that owns Ventura.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense.
But nonetheless, this guy started. He was one of the first. I think he was one of 3 or 4 people when Davidoff started, and it wasn't Davidoff. I mean, it was like, a tiny operation of making cigars in Dominican Republic, Hanky Kellner, that then grew into this Davidoff thing. But his approach to tobacco, his approach to aging tobacco, his approach to blending, his approach to manufacturing is all that pedigree coming from there. And as I mentioned to you before the podcast, you said, what do you keep in your humidor? I like my cigars. I don't smoke all my cigars, but I love Davidoff. That to me, and not all of them, but some of them. But nonetheless, I was doing a lot of work with Davidoff in the hotel business. I was doing distribution for hotels and restaurants for them specifically as well. And at some point I was doing private labels and this type of thing. And a guy at Davidoff said to me, you've got to meet this guy, William. And he told me this history. So I flew down to the Dominican Republic, tried the cigars, met with him. And I'm like, oh my God, these are amazing. Then I partnered with Christian.
Yeah.
And we did that. And then when I moved on from that, every time I'd go to Dominican Republic, I'd pass by Williams, give him a few $100s, and I'd get a bunch of bundles, and I'd smoke them for myself.
Oh, sick.
So,
sick.
And even to this day, William Ventura, he's got 2 sons, Henderson that owns Ventura and Weber worked for Davidoff for like 20 years as well. William will make a blend, and he'll have a very small amount of tobacco, nothing you can commercially sell, but he'll have just enough tobacco for like 1,000 cigars. Yeah. And he's got a humidor filled with these special things. And he's kind of retired now. Sons are running the operation. But he continues to make cigars because he loves making cigars. But he'll have like this very special small amount of tobacco and make 1,000 cigars. You can do nothing with them. It's such a small amount. And then he'll smoke one. Say, oh, this is amazing. And then his sons will be like, can I have one? And he's like, no. But he'll give them to me.
Oh, what?
Because he and I have the same exact palate.
Oh, he knows you appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh. So he his daughter is like, she's the one that guards the gate to the humidor. So I'll walk into his little factory. He's not there. The daughter's there. And I'll be like, hey, let me get a couple bundles of this cigar. And she gives me like a couple bundles. And then Henderson that owns Ventura, his son, let me get some. And she's like, no. Poppy says you can't have any. Because she knows that he doesn't appreciate them the same way that I do.
Hilarious.
So anyways, we met each other and we hit it off. And so everything that's important to him on a manufacturing level is important to me on a consumer level. So this guy
okay.
builds to me the perfect cigars.
And then you're able to bring it to the market.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
when I go to make a cigar, it's like, okay, I want aged tobacco. I don't want to speed anything up. I want it to be ready when it's ready. I don't want, any of these things that people do in the industry that I disagree with. This guy is a purist and he does it exactly that way. And when the cigar's ready, the cigar's ready. And when the blend's ready, the blend's ready. And if I ask William to make me like a super spice, crazy, strong, insane cigar, he'd just say, no, find another factory. He makes cigars this way.
Like if within that, let's say we have a scale, a strength scale 1 to 10, it's like 3 to 7, constantly in that range.
Plus or minus, yeah.
Plus or minus.
Going
yeah.
a little under that. And actually some of his
Yeah.
cigars, so give me a cigar sometimes and I light it. And as I said prior, I don't like a super smooth, creamy, kind of like, but sometimes they'll give me a cigar and I take a puff and I'm like, this is a little light for me. And then he's like, smoke a little more. And then I take like 2 more puffs and then all of a sudden it opens out. I'm like, wow.
You got to get to the 3rd puff, Robert.
Yeah, exactly. But that to me also
Yeah.
is a product that doesn't work. If I got to get 3 puffs in, it's not a good cigar in my world.
Interesting.
Because people don't give you the second chance. They light it, they take 1 puff, and they analyze the first puff.
Right.
People aren't patient.
Right.
And a really good cigar smoker maybe will take a few, or an avid smoker that understands will smoke through it a little bit, and then when it opens, oh wow, this great experience. But a lot of guys, you hand them a cigar, they put it in their mouth, they light that cigar, and the first puff is the judgment of the rest of the cigar.
It's just how it is with anything else. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
No, that makes sense,
you
the
pour
first
out,
sip, the first whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it.
The
yeah.
first impression is the one that
Yeah,
sticks.
Yeah. I mean, when you're drive testing a car, same thing, right? Like, oh yeah, no, you buy the car now, and then when you drive it a week later, you're gonna love it.
Yeah. It's gonna feel real comfortable in a week. But right now, it's stiff.
People who smoke with you, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but they tend to describe your smoking personality as like you prefer mild, like mellow, creamy. Maybe some other elements in there, I don't know. I think Eastern Standard speaks to that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, then we talked about the first puff. How do you describe that experience lighting up Eastern Standard, and what makes it different than other mild cigars on the market?
So what makes it different than other mild cigars on the market is it's got a depth to it that other cigars just don't have. And to me, Eastern Standard, when people try to understand the Caldwell portfolio or like what is Caldwell about, what cigar, if you're mild, you're full, you love, it doesn't matter what you like, smoke Eastern Standard. Because Eastern Standard, it's mild to medium, it's creamy and smooth, but it's rich and it has deep flavor and it's got this like, this mouth feel that you're like,
Yes,
wow, it
has
just coats,
a lot of body.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
So to me, that cigar, again, it's like the apex of the Caldwell thing because it does that profile in a way that no other brands do. And still to this day, I don't think anybody comes near that with that style of cigar in terms of like a unique experience. And even a big body guy that loves spice and loves pepper and loves really rich cigars, you smoke that cigar and you taste it.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very tasteful, lighter cigar.
Fantastic smoke, man. And I feel like a lot of the times people who tend to lean more medium, full body, because the people in their cigar journey, they start with the Connecticut's as recommended by most retailers. Something approachable, beginner friendly, slowly progress and develop. And then they have like a full circle moment where they circle, after they develop like more of a palate, so to speak, they go back full circle and try the Connecticut again, and they love it a lot more. And honest to God, I have customers that speak to that with the Eastern Standard in particular. Like, oh yeah, I revisited it after a year of smoking cigars and I can pick up this. It does have that distinct element to it, which is always very, I mean, I'm sure you would appreciate that because that's kind of the trajectory that you aim for with your blends. And speaking of all the vintage tobaccos that you look for, and I'm sure you have a lot of tobaccos in the inventory that have a lot of age on them. They're very well taken care of by the Ventura family. Is there any vintage tobacco that you haven't worked with yet that you'd be excited to explore in the future?
Not off the top of my head. But I'm always looking, and so sometimes you get surprised. So sometimes you'll get, like we did a cigar with Matt Booth called Hit and Run.
Yeah.
And that was a Habano tobacco coming from Ecuador that had been aged, 4 years. And so every once in a while, I wouldn't say that there's like new variety, anything like that, but every once in a while you get access to or somebody has.
Yeah.
So, but there's nothing that I can think of off the top of my head, like, oh, I want to work with this tobacco.
Well, because we're like, for example, we're smoking The King is Dead, right?
Long
Live the King. And it's got Dominican Corojo, Peruvian tobacco, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you it's such exotic tobaccos in my opinion, right? Like it's hard to come together. Is that just a talent thing from you and William, or who collaborates on this?
This blend I made in my factory in Miami.
Oh, interesting.
Using Christian's tobacco.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
okay.
I was working there with only Honduran tobacco.
Yeah.
And then when I went to Dominican Republic, I said, okay, I will, and I had this blend already, but it was all Honduran tobacco. And Honduras very proudly says we are the only place that has authentic Corojo, which I think is probably trademarked by Davidoff for Camacho. Nonetheless, it's unhybridized Corojo because there was a blue mold that killed all the Corojo that was growing in the Caribbean. But when you got to Central America, all of a sudden in Honduras, I don't know if it's the altitude or what, but the mold didn't pass. So they had Corojo tobacco. And then in the Dominican Republic, they had Corojo too, but the Corojo in the Dominican Republic had been hybridized so that the mold wouldn't affect it. And then so you had Corojo, and then you had hybrid Corojo. And effectively, it's the same flavor, but different experience. And I like to say, like, Corojo is Scotch neat, hybrid Corojo is Scotch and water. So it's the same flavor, but it hits your palate completely differently. So nonetheless, I go to Dominican Republic, and I have my blend from my factory in Miami.
Yeah.
But I will not use their tobacco because it's hybrid Corojo and it just falls flat on your palate in my blend.
Yeah.
Then, like you were saying, finding these tobaccos, I'm talking to a farmer there and he's like, my Corojo is not hybridized. Oh. I'm like, well, how can it be? And he's like, I don't know. My farm, like we never hybridized Corojo. We never had mold issues. That way for us, And so that's something like on this cigar that's very special because it's Corojo that's not hybrid. Yeah. That's also coming from Dominican Republic. Yeah. And it's a different flavor from the Honduran one, in that the Honduran one, when you smoke Honduran Corojo rolled into a blend, you taste Corojo in your mouth, and when you blow out the smoke, you have like a Corojo plus experience where you're tasting the other components of the cigar. But this cigar, to me, using the Dominican Corojo, it's much softer tobacco than the Honduran Corojo is, so you can taste the other components and the other nuances in the blend in the cigar.
Very well put. Very well put. And you mentioned earlier that, like William Ventura is a purist. What did you mean by that? And what are some are there some practices in this industry that people don't know about from a manufacturer's side that don't make them a purist?
Yeah.
Okay, can you go into that a little bit further?
So, without lifting up the veil too much, I mean, people play games with steaming tobacco, cooking tobacco, stuff like that to give uniformity of color, this types of things.
But what is the one thing that happens within the industry that people will be like, damn, I would never have guessed?
Artificial strength of cigars.
Artificial.
So, by way of fermenting them not long enough.
Yeah.
So a lot of very, very full-bodied cigars can only be so strong. I mean, if you ferment the tobacco correctly, you age the cigar correctly, you're going to end up with a strength at a certain level that's derived by the tobacco itself. If you shorten the time that you process that tobacco, you can make it stronger and stronger, but that means it's going to have higher moisture content. It has more ammonia in it, so the way it hits your palate is, wow, it's so strong. But if you age that cigar for a year in a humidor with no cellophane on it, and you come back and pick it up, it's going to have 30% kind of crash in that experience. So this is something, is that people don't process, or they process the tobacco not the way they always did. They process it based on the demand of the consumer, which is stronger, stronger, stronger. Yeah. So then you end up having effectively raw tobacco coming with a lot of cigars.
I see.
And the test of this is take the cigar, put it in a humidor with no cellophane, pick it up a year later, see how it tastes next to one that you just bought. You're going to have a 5% correction in flavor, but that's just because the cigar is mellowing out as it ages. Yeah. But if you take a full-bodied Nicaraguan pepper bomb, put it in a humidor, pick it up a year later, it's going to be 30-40% different. Because the tobacco hasn't gone through its process and it's still doing it in your humidor. Exactly.
Absolutely.
But to answer your other question, William being a purist, I had a cigar called 22 Minutes to Midnight under the Lost and Found brand. Expensive cigar, incredible cigar. And so William and I worked on this cigar, and I had pre-sold all of it, 1,000 boxes down, everything's gone. And so I need the cigars, they're not ready. Then all of a sudden shipment comes out. And then so I'm waiting for the cigars to arrive to Miami. I don't look at the manifest to see what's coming, I just know my cigars are coming.
Yeah.
So cigars come, and I got a Toro, and I got a Corona. But there's a Robusto, and the Robusto's not in the shipment. Pick up the phone, I call Natalie, William's daughter, I'm like, where's my fucking Robustos? She's like, Daddy said they're not ready yet. And I'm like, let me talk to him.
Does she actually say Daddy said they're not ready
Poppy.
yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then I'm like, William, what's the deal with the cigars? He said, listen. He said we packed the Toro, we packed the Corona, We were about to pack the Robusto, but there was a lot of rain in Dominican Republic over the last few days. So there's a little higher moisture level than I like to have in the
So
factory.
we couldn't ship it.
They're not going to be perfect. So I'd rather wait a week until it dries out a little bit here to pack them to make sure that they're perfect.
Wow.
This is William Ventura.
Wow.
Nobody else would do that.
Wow.
And not even to the point of like, if I said, send me the cigars now, he'd say no. He won't release them.
He won't refuse. Are there any manufacturers who, I'm sure you get approached a lot by different, potential partners, and they're like, oh, we do it this way. It's way different with us. Our fermentation process is like, a lot more elaborate, or whatever the terms they would use. How often do you get that?
No, very often. But the thing is, I mean, all of my cigars, and I've made cigars with different people.
Yeah.
They all fit in the same kind of like channel.
Yeah.
So the manufacturers that I work with, I feel like these guys all do it this way, and then all you got to do is smoke somebody else's cigar. So I would like to make cigars for you, with you, whatever. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. And you asked earlier, actually, was there anybody else I would collaborate with?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Well, I would maybe. Dion from Illusione.
Interesting.
That guy is.
What a interesting answer.
But you know why? If I was a Nicaraguan manufacturer, I feel like my cigars would taste like Dion cigars.
Man, I'm not just saying this in front of you, but of all Illusione, right? I've always been on the lookout for that guy's brand. I've heard nothing but great things. I'm super excited to try his stuff, and now after you just mentioned that, it just makes me all the more excited. We don't have much time left. I wanted to ask a question that's very, kind of personal, like some of my favorite cigars that I've smoked in your portfolio. Actually, the favorite. I'm very partial to Cameroon, and when I saw Long Live the Queen hit the shelves in our market, I was immediately, I was one of the first guys to pick up the phone. I'm like, I need to try that. Caldwell, Cameroon, it's crazy. Talk to me about how you approached Cameroon tobacco and the whole blending process with that cigar.
So that cigar was, so in my mind, when I made Queen, I wanted to use something that we hadn't used before. And Cameroon's actually, it's a hard to get tobacco.
Yeah.
It's hard to get big leaves. It's brittle. It's a problematic tobacco. But then we ended up getting Cameroon. And then I said, okay, if I'm going to do a Cameroon, I want it to be a Cameroon that tastes unlike all the other Cameroons on the market. And I wouldn't say that those Cameroons all taste the same, because they do all taste very different, but I wanted a Caldwell approach to it. So we ended up buying a bunch of Cameroon tobacco, and then we further processed it. We did additional fermentations. That doesn't answer your question, but effectively I wanted to have...
No, it's like the backstory is interesting.
So when people you have this assumption in your head of Cameroon and what it tastes like.
Yeah.
And then when you light Long Live the Queen, you're like, okay, it's a different...
Yeah.
It's like the same ingredients, different chef. And to me, I mean, before the podcast, we were talking about cigars. I only smoke a few cigars that I make. If I sit down, afternoon, sunset, on a terrace with a cigar, what do I reach for? Queen Lancero, to me, is an incredible cigar.
That's called the Sword.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the Sword.
That cigar is incredible. The Eastern Standard, the Pyramid, the Eastern Standard, little Manzanita, the little shorty.
Yeah.
But those are two of my go. And then Anastasia, I've always loved. But to me, like the approach that we had it was incredible with Queen too, because I was actually going for something different on the blend.
Yeah.
Very different. I wanted to have it be like much, much more powerful.
Yeah.
But then when we landed on this thing, I went down with William, and he'd sent me these samples, and they'd arrived to Miami, and I'd smoked them, and I was a little bit underwhelmed with them.
Right.
And then I sit down with William in Dominican Republic, and they hadn't, cigars travel, they get kind of sick and whatever. So I sit down with him at the factory, and I light this thing, and I'm like, oh my God. And I just knew it. And the proof in the pudding was when we launched Queen, I think we did 2,000 boxes. No.
Yeah.
4,000 or 5,000 boxes.
It's one of your most successful lines now.
Yeah, but we sold them like in a day.
Yeah.
Like we brought in, I don't know how many cigars. It was 150 to 200,000 cigars, whatever it was. The box, and we bring 10 count boxes. We bring them in, and they were just like gone. And so now, you mentioned it's one of our most successful cigars. A lot of our cigars, U.S. market, are coming in 24 count boxes. Mm-hmm. Queen's a 10. So you know how retailers think, give me 5 boxes.
Yes.
So this is 25, that's 125 cigars. This is 10, that's 50 cigars. But cigar for cigar, Queen is right there with Long Live the King, which has 2.5 times more cigar in the box. So it's selling like crazy. It's just performed incredibly well.
Man, that's awesome to hear. How do you know when a cigar that was initially meant to be extremely limited, like you said, like 2,000 of the Queen, how do you know when it, like, outside of like the demand and stuff like that, do you ever get a cigar that sells so successfully and you're like, I was not expecting that?
Yellow Cake.
Yellow
The
Cake.
short filler thing.
Yeah, people loved it, dude.
We still will do 150, 200,000 cigars and they're gone in a day.
And you're like, what the fuck?
It's
like,
short filler.
Yeah.
And my marketing approach, I'm like, and it's not even marketing. I don't smoke those cigars. I don't think they're good cigars.
Yeah.
It's like the chopped shit left over from the cigars. And we started doing them as promotion because we were so on back order that we couldn't do like buy 3, get 1 free in events. So I said, okay, I need to have something to give away. And we didn't have enough tobacco. We didn't have enough cigars, but we had this chopped, shit that the factory was selling onward to be used for whatever. And I said, can we make some mixed filler like Cuban sandwich cigars, put them in a little 3-pack, and then when you buy a box, you get whatever, and then you get these pack or 2 packs of these cigars. And they just like took off. And even now, like it's not even marketing, it is marketing, but I did a video a couple years ago. I had a wall like, that like 20 feet wide like that, like floor to ceiling, 10 deep, stacked to the roof. And I'm like, these cigars just came in, they're fucking horrible. I don't smoke them, they taste like shit. But if you want them, they're here.
Yeah.
In
Just
a
like
day,
that.
200,000 cigars.
How much do you attribute that to the branding? Who's coming up with these names, first of all? Like,
Me.
you're very much involved. There's nobody else in assistance with that. Yellow Cake, One Night Stand, Just the Tip.
So the Lost and Found stuff.
Just the Tip is hilarious.
Yeah, that was mine. The Lost and Found stuff, there's a girl named Jacqueline Sears.
Yeah.
That she was part of Lost and Found. And then she worked with us, worked with Drew Estate. Now she's working with us again. So she came up with a lot of Lost and Found stuff. The Caldwell stuff, all my concepts. But I think what attracts people to Yellow Cake is there's people that don't like what I make.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then I'm
Yeah,
like, I hate this cigar.
You're not going to satisfy everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the guy that doesn't like anything else I make probably would like Yellow Cake. You get what I'm saying?
Because it's different.
Yeah, I don't know. So a lot of times guys are like, I tried Eastern Standard, I tried Anastasia, I don't like these cigars. I'm like, okay, try Mad Mofo. Because I don't like that cigar. So maybe you'll like it. Because if you don't like,
cigar.
it's Maduro as well. I don't like Maduro. But if
yeah.
you don't like what I like, then maybe you'll like what I don't like.
Exactly.
And before you'd ask me also, like, do I blend for me or do I blend for the masses?
Yeah.
And when I started, it was me and my palate.
Yes.
And then as we expanded, become a bigger company, you have to have a Maduro. We didn't have a Maduro. You have to have this, you have to have this. So we started adding components.
Those came later. Yeah. Well, let me ask you one of the final questions here, because I know we're running low on time, and I can keep going on and on. But let's just say, obviously you're a well-traveled person, and you only have one cigar to smoke, and you got DJ Ash in the background, and fantastic cuisine, and it's just everything. The stars are aligned. What cigar are you lighting up?
Mine?
Yeah.
Anastasia Green Label, the first one, the Corona size.
Interesting. Well, so what's the blend on that? Because I don't think we've
We
had
never
that available.
disclosed that blend, actually.
Why do people not okay, so if there's so much, a lot of factories like secret ingredients, and this people in an era today, we live in a world in the cigar industry where everybody nowadays wants to know the whole, tobacco leaf blend and binder, filler, wrapper, everything, the factory, the master blender, the aging process. There's so much more involved. These past couple of years, it's gone a lot more. Like the customers that we've been getting are a lot more involved in that process, like the manufacturing process. They just want to know. But then factories sometimes like to say we can't disclose it.
So when we started the brand, I had a blending card on every box that would tell you the exact blend, the percentages that was inside it. And then when FDA started wanting to regulate in the United States, I had other manufacturers, big guys, like, hey, you don't do this because you're doing this and nobody else is. But I was very forthcoming with the blends, and I still am. We release everything, with a couple exceptions. Anastasia, no, and 22 Minutes, no. And the reason for those two is because I could tell you what's in that cigar, but I'm not sure what's in that cigar. Because I don't know what's in that cigar. Because Anastasia we made with Ernesto Carrillo, and I know what's in the cigar, but I'm like not sure that's exactly what it is, so I put undisclosed.
But how do you make it so consistently then?
Well, he makes it. So that's made for us by Carrillo.
So you actually don't know. Like
I
you don't know
I know what I've been told, but I look at the tobacco, I open up that tobacco, and I'm like, I don't know. So rather than like saying it's something that I'm not sure that it is.
You don't want to know, essentially.
Well, the tobacco that comes into William Ventura, I know exactly what it is. I know where it comes from. I know
Most
the
of your core
vintage.
lines are made
all,
there.
All of it.
Yeah,
I
all
know
your
exactly
core,
what's in that cigar.
Yeah.
So stuff that's made third party, and that one in particular, because in that process, there was like a couple times that like the tobacco was said and it was said differently. What was in it? And then I was like, I don't know if this is exact. And I don't know.
Well, like Blind Man's Bluff is made in Honduras.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, what factory is that coming out
That's
of?
coming. It's the Davidoff Camacho. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. It doesn't matter. But their factory there.
Yeah.
But that's easy because that's all run-of-the-mill tobacco. And the difference with Anastasia and the difference with 22 Minutes, like the Anastasia wrapper, the original green label wrapper was 12 years old when we made the cigar. And a lot of the tobaccos, we can never recreate that cigar. We made 60, 70, 80,000 cigars and that was it.
That's it.
But I know what the tobacco is. But am I certain that's what it is? No, I'm not. So then I put undisclosed.
Yeah.
So the wrapper is Habano, but then the rest of the blend, I'm not exactly, I don't have 100% confidence that that's what actually the blend is, so I'm not going to release it to people. And then the same thing with the 22 Minutes to Midnight. Because 22 Minutes, we made that cigar with William. It's all super vintage tobacco. A lot of the stuff this guy had been sitting on for like 10, 12 years. It's unlabeled. It's sitting in the factory. So I'm like, do I know exactly what this is? So the time that we say undisclosed is because we can't trace exactly the lineage of the tobacco back to the source.
Yes, fair enough. No, I think that's a very elaborate answer, truly, and it makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned that cigar, for your, desert island cigar, so to speak, would be Anastasia. Where are you lighting it up as my last question before we wrap it up? Because you've been to so many countries. How many countries have you been to, Rob?
93.
Okay.
And many times. Like I've been to Spain 100 times. I've been to Italy 50 times. So a lot of times, like
we're originally from Lebanon. It's not a lot of cigar guys I talk to in industry that say I've been to Lebanon, with the exception of I can count on one hand the amount of people that have said that to me. And immediately you told me you've been there. I was stunned. But then again, I remember like from watching your previous podcasts and interviews. Yeah, I mean, this guy's talking about he's been to this country and this country. I guess it makes sense, right? What's the place you're lighting up, Anastasia?
Actually, now that you mentioned Lebanon, that would be in the running. I don't know where.
It would be nice with like the missiles kind of flying over you from like the.
Dude, I sit there with my fucking hummus and my water pipe and my fucking coffee. I mean, Beirut's a good place to smoke.
Yeah.
But city-wise, maybe Milan.
Milan, eh?
Dude, Milan's great, man. You sit there with your little coffee, like people are passing, they're dressed nice, they speak Italian, they're cool, you smoke a little cigar. That to me is a great city to like just post up in a cafe and smoke and watch people. So that might be it. But I wouldn't keep Lebanon, Beirut would be my top 5.
Beirut's good, man.
Beirut's awesome.
Good.
Man.
We appreciate you very much, Robert.
City.
Guys, there you have it. True original himself, Robert, the man, the legend. It's been a long time coming. Very thankful and honored to have you on today.
My pleasure.
It's been an absolute amazing time.
Likewise.
And hopefully this isn't the last time.
Sounds good.
Try to make it work. Thank you.
Yeah, my
All
pleasure.
Right. Take care.